Welcome back, Lincoln currency. Imagine holding in your hand a single penny, the smallest coin in American currency, something that most people wouldn't even bother to pick up from the ground. But what if I told you that a simple 1981 Lincoln cent, the kind you might find lying forgotten in an old drawer, or mixed in with loose change, could be worth up to $94 million today? Yes, you heard that right. 94 million US dollars for a 1-cent coin that was once used to buy a single piece of candy. It sounds unbelievable, almost like a fantasy, but in the world of rare coins and numismatics, where history, rarity, and microscopic imperfections can create legends, this little copper coin from Denver has become one of the most talked about treasures in American minting history. Let's dive deep into the story, a story that connects American heritage, coin-making craftsmanship, economic transitions, and sheer luck. Because this is not just a story about a penny, it's a story about how something ordinary can transform into something extraordinary, simply because of the details hidden beneath its surface. The year was 1981. Ronald Reagan had just taken office as the 40th President of the United States. The country was facing economic challenges, with inflation, oil prices, and unemployment testing the strength of the dollar. But amid the larger economic picture, at the United States Mint, production continued steadily. Billions of pennies were struck to meet circulation demand. At the Denver Mint facility, these coins carried a small yet defining mark, a D mint mark, just below the date on the obverse side, to signify their origin. At first glance, the 1981 D penny looked no different from millions of others, the familiar image of Abraham Lincoln facing right, designed by Victor David Brenner in 1909, celebrating the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. The reverse side, at that time, featured the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 by Frank Gasparo, marking the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth and replacing the earlier wheat ears design. Every detail, from Lincoln's sharp cheekbone to the architectural lines of the memorial, carried the elegance of American mint artistry. But what made this particular penny, or more precisely, some rare specimens of the 1981 D penny, so special, so mysterious, and so valuable that they could command tens of millions of dollars in collectors' markets? To understand that, we must go beneath the surface, literally. You see, 1981 was a turning point in the composition of U.S. pennies. For decades, pennies had been made primarily of copper, 95% copper and 5% zinc. However, copper prices were rising sharply during the late 1970s and early 1980s, making it increasingly expensive for the U.S. Mint to produce coins that were worth more in metal than their face value. There were even times when the copper content in a penny exceeded 1 cent in value. This caused people to hoard pennies, melt them, and sell the copper, an unintended consequence that alarmed the Treasury. To solve this, the Mint began experimenting with alternative metals, eventually deciding to switch to a zinc core with a thin copper plating. That transition officially happened in 1982. But 1981 was the final full year when U.S. pennies were made of nearly pure copper, and that fact alone gives the 1981 D coin a kind of historical finality. It was the last breath of a long era of true copper coinage. Each 1981 D penny weighed about 3.11 grams, slightly heavier than the later zinc-based coins, which weigh around 2.5 grams. That difference in weight, though small, is a crucial identifier between copper and zinc cents. The diameter of the coin remained 19.05 millimeters, with a smooth, plain edge. Now, about that D, it signifies the Denver Mint, located in Colorado, one of the major facilities of the U.S. Mint responsible for producing circulating coinage. Denver was known for high-quality strikes, and in 1981 alone, it minted more than 5.3 billion pennies. Yes, billions, which is why, for most people, the idea that one of those could be worth $94 million seems absurd. But here's where the story takes a twist. Among billions of coins, a few were struck under unusual conditions, coins with perfect surfaces, flawless centering, sharp edges, and extraordinary luster. These were often the result of specially prepared dies or coins that were part of test strikes before large-scale production. Sometimes they were struck on planchets, coin blanks, meant for other denominations, or even on transitional metals from previous years. In other cases, minting errors, like doubled dies, off-center strikes, or misaligned dies, gave certain coins their unique fingerprint of rarity. For the 1981 D penny, experts and collectors have identified a handful of coins with such rare traits, and one in particular, verified to be in pristine, mint-state condition, allegedly changed hands in a private auction for a jaw-dropping $94 million. While the exact transaction details are cloaked in collector secrecy, it sparked a global frenzy among numismatists, treasure hunters, and history enthusiasts. But why would anyone pay such an astronomical amount for a coin that cost 1 cent to make? The answer lies in 3 key factors: rarity, condition, and provenance. First, rarity doesn't just mean few in existence. It means few in perfect form. Most pennies go through circulation, suffering scratches, discoloration, and wear. But the few coins that survive untouched from the mint, with their original shine, can become incredibly desirable. For 1981D, coins graded by professional services like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, or NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, as MS67 or higher are already worth thousands. At the highest grades, with proof-like qualities, their value skyrockets. Second, the condition, the sharpness of the details, the luster of the surface, the depth of the strike, defines the beauty and collectability of the coin. A coin that has never been circulated, handled, or exposed to moisture retains that freshly minted look that collectors crave. Third, provenance, or the coin's history. Coins connected to famous collections or discovered under unusual circumstances often gain legendary status. Imagine a coin found in a sealed mint bag forgotten in a Federal Reserve vault for decades, or recovered from an estate of a former mint employee. That story itself adds millions in mystique. When these elements converge, a perfect strike, a historical transition year, and a pristine copper composition, the coin transcends its material value. It becomes art, heritage, and investment, all in one. Collectors are willing to pay such sums not because of the coin's face value, but because of its story, a story that cannot be replicated. Every mark, every gleam, every microscopic imperfection is a fingerprint of history frozen in metal. Interestingly, the 1981 D penny also reflects the craftsmanship of the Denver Mint during a period of significant transition. Dies were prepared with extreme care, and many of these coins had remarkably sharp details, especially around Lincoln's hair, the lettering, "In God We Trust," and the steps of the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. For high-grade collectors, the visibility of those steps, often referred to as full steps, is a mark of perfection. Over time, millions of these pennies circulated through the hands of Americans, unnoticed, buying candies, newspapers, and morning coffees. Yet, hidden among them, 1 or 2 extraordinary examples were quietly waiting to be discovered, coins so flawless, so unique, that when they finally emerged decades later, they stunned the numismatic community. The idea of a $94 million penny also brings attention to the broader psychology of collecting. Humans have always been drawn to rarity, from ancient relics to postage stamps, from paintings to precious stones. But coins carry a special power because they connect directly to daily life and history. They pass through generations, pocket to pocket, each one carrying unseen stories. For coin collectors, known as numismatists, finding a perfect 1981 D penny is like finding a modern-day treasure. And the hunt is not over. To this day, thousands of people across the world check their spare change, search through coin rolls from banks, and use magnifying glasses to look for clues, doubling in letters, tiny die cracks, off-center details, anything that might reveal a hidden fortune. When you think about it, the beauty of this story is that it turns something ordinary into something extraordinary. A single penny, worth 1 cent in spending value, can hold a world of worth if it's rare enough. And that's the magic that keeps collectors inspired. In this video, we're going to peel back every layer of this story, from the origins of the design to the meaning of that little D below the date, from how to recognize the difference between an ordinary penny and $1 million treasure, to the incredible tales of collectors who've spent decades searching for that one perfect specimen. Before we go further, let's set the stage. The 1981 D penny was minted in the city of Denver, Colorado, a place known for its high-altitude air, mountain backdrop, and one of the most technologically advanced coin-producing facilities in the world. The Denver Mint had been striking coins since the early 1900s, and by 1981 it had become a powerhouse of precision. Every day, millions of planchets, small metal discs, were fed into massive presses that stamped out Lincoln's profile with a thunderous rhythm. The sound of steel dies meeting copper filled the minting halls, creating an unending metallic symphony that echoed through history. Imagine the moment a single planchet is transformed into a coin. The blank disc, cut from copper sheets, enters the press. In a split-second strike, 150 tons of pressure imprint Abraham Lincoln's face on one side and the Lincoln Memorial on the other. It's a process so fast, yet so precise, that even a microscopic shift in alignment can create an entirely different coin, a potential error worth thousands. Now think of how many millions of these coins were produced, and yet, among them, a handful became priceless. That's the allure of the 1981 D penny. It's a coin that seems ordinary until you see the extraordinary craftsmanship hidden within. The design itself has a deep history. The obverse side, with Lincoln's dignified portrait, was created by Victor David Brenner in 1909. It was the first time a U.S. coin bore the face of a real person. Brenner's inspiration came from Lincoln's moral strength and his dedication to unity. When Americans first saw that coin in 1909, it wasn't just currency, it was a tribute. Over 70 years later, in 1981, that same design was still going strong, symbolizing endurance and national identity. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial stands tall, an emblem of respect and remembrance. Frank Gasparo's 1959 design placed the monument in miniature, so detailed that with a magnifying glass you could even see a tiny statue of Lincoln inside, seated just as he is in the real memorial. Every column, every shadow, and every letter of E pluribus unum speaks of meticulous craftsmanship. Now let's talk about what made this coin's year, 1981, so historically crucial. It was the last full year that the U.S. Mint struck pennies with a solid copper composition. By 1982, the Mint officially changed his ink cores with a thin copper coating. This change wasn't random. It was an economic necessity. Copper prices were rising, and producing copper pennies was becoming more expensive than their face value. So 1981 D pennies became the final generation of the true copper cents, each containing about 3.11 grams of 95% copper and 5% zinc. That difference in metal content matters immensely to collectors. Copper has a rich, reddish glow that zinc coins lack. When you hold a 1981 D copper penny in the light, it gleams warmly, almost alive. Zinc coins, in contrast, feel lighter, cooler, and less substantial. For numismatists, that tiny difference in weight and tone separates a piece of living history from a modern imitation. But there's another layer, the mint mark. D. Located just beneath the year, it identifies the coin's origin as Denver. The Denver Mint is known for strong strikes, crisp details, and remarkable die preparation. That's why many of the best preserved 1981 D specimens come from here. In the coin world, certain Denver issues have gained mythic reputations, and the 1981 D cent stands among them. Let's step deeper now into the technical heart of this incredible story, the minting process, the possible errors, the metal composition, and why some 1981 D pennies became so rare that collectors now whisper about them like lost treasures. Because when it comes to coin value, every microscopic detail can mean the difference between 1 cent and a life-changing fortune. To understand why the 1981 D penny is so fascinating, we need to picture the mint floor in Denver in that final copper year. Giant hoppers were filled with blank copper discs, each one cut from long rolled sheets of metal known as planchets. These blanks were tumbled, cleaned, and polished before being fed into stamping machines that could strike hundreds of coins per minute. The dies, one for the obverse and one for the reverse, came crashing together with astonishing precision, striking Lincoln's image onto one side and the Lincoln Memorial on the other. But the magic and the mystery lie in how sometimes, against all odds, a single misalignment, an overpolished die, or an incorrect planchet creates an anomaly. And that anomaly can transform an ordinary penny into an extraordinary prize. Let's begin with the metal composition, because that alone already separates the 1981D from later issues. Each coin contained about 95% copper and 5% zinc, giving it the rich reddish-brown tone that older pennies are known for. The weight was 3.11 grams, a figure every serious collector memorizes. After 1982, when the mint switched to zinc cores, the weight dropped to about 2.5 grams. That tiny difference may sound trivial, but it's how you can instantly identify whether a coin is copper or zinc, and in the world of coin collecting, that difference can multiply the value 1,000-fold. Another key detail is the mint mark, D, below the date, stamped to indicate the Denver Mint. The way that D appears on a coin can reveal a lot about how the die was prepared. On most 1981D pennies, it's crisp and centered. But on rare occasions, you might find a filled D where a bit of metal or grease blocked part of the mint mark during striking, giving it a blobbed or faint appearance. Such varieties, while subtle, are instantly intriguing to collectors. And then there's the concept of strike quality, how sharply the coin's design was transferred from the die to the planchet. A strong strike means you can see every line in Lincoln's hair, every fold in his coat, and every step of the Lincoln Memorial in exact detail. Weak strikes happen when the dies are worn or the pressure is slightly off. In normal circulation, that might not matter, but for collectors chasing perfection, it's everything. The rarest and most valuable 1981D specimens are those that show deep, frosted details against mirror-like fields, surfaces so polished that they reflect light like glass. Such coins, often called proof-like or specimen strikes, were probably not meant for circulation at all. They might have been test strikes, presentation pieces, or coins struck with freshly prepared dies at the beginning of a production run. And then there's the world of error coins, where the real excitement begins. Imagine a coin struck slightly off-center, so that part of the design spills off the edge. Or a coin struck on the wrong planchet, say, a penny design struck accidentally on a dime's metal blank. These are the kinds of errors that make collectors' hearts race. For 1981D, there have been reports of off-center strikes up to 20%, broad strikes where the collar didn't hold the coin during the strike, and even die cracks that appear as raised lines snaking across the coin's surface. Each one tells a story, a tiny moment in the minting process when something went unpredictably right. But one of the most legendary varieties rumored to exist is the transitional error, a coin struck on a 1982 zinc planchet that somehow found its way into the 1981 production line. If such a coin exists with the 1981D date but a 2.5 gram weight, it would be one of the rarest modern minting mistakes ever made. Collectors have scoured countless rolls of pennies searching for one, and stories continue to circulate about mysterious finds tucked away in old jars. Now let's talk about grading, because a coin's grade is the language of its value. The Sheldon scale, developed by Dr. William Sheldon, ranges from 1 to 70, with 70 being absolute perfection, no marks visible even under magnification. For the 1981D penny, coins graded MS65 to MS67 already command impressive prices, often hundreds or even thousands of dollars. But if a coin reaches the coveted MS68 or higher, the value can leap into 6 or 7 figures. And if the coin has proof-like surfaces or is considered a unique mint anomaly, that's where numbers like 94 million come into play in private valuations. But grading isn't just about numbers, it's about beauty, luster, and preservation. When a copper coin is freshly struck, it glows a vibrant reddish color known as full red. Over time, exposure to air can darken it to a red-brown, or eventually, brown. Collectors prize those that remain full red, because they look almost as if they were minted yesterday. To find a 1981D penny with that perfect full red hue after more than 40 years is nothing short of miraculous. The journey of one of these coins from the mint to a collector's showcase is also part of its mystique. Imagine a roll of pennies leaving the Denver Mint in 1981, 50 shiny new cents sealed in paper and sent to a bank. Most were spent immediately. But maybe one roll was forgotten, tucked away in a drawer, or stored in a safe deposit box. Decades later, when someone opens it, the coins inside gleam untouched, still as bright as the day they were struck. Among them, perhaps one stands out, a perfect strike, no blemishes, no bag marks, flawless luster. That's the dream scenario, and it's not impossible. Stories like these have fueled modern-day treasure hunts. Across the United States, people dig through coffee cans, old piggy banks, and family coin jars looking for 1981 pennies. Metal detectorists comb parks and old homesteads hoping to uncover one buried by time. The thrill isn't just in finding a coin, it's in uncovering a fragment of history that could rewrite your fortune. To truly grasp the majesty of the 1981 penny, we need to understand not only how it was made, but what it meant, socially, economically, and symbolically. Because this coin wasn't born in a vacuum. It came from an era of change, of tension between tradition and progress. And that's what makes every 1981 penny, and especially the rare, flawless ones, far more than just metal. The late 1970s and early 1980s were turbulent years for the American economy. Inflation had eroded purchasing power, unemployment was high, and people were beginning to lose faith in the dollar's stability. The U.S. Mint faced an unusual dilemma. The price of copper had climbed so high that making 1 penny out of it was costing nearly 2 cents. Imagine that irony, producing a coin that costs more to make than its own face value. It was a small problem that symbolized a much bigger one, the shifting balance of the American economy. And yet, even as the Treasury debated solutions, the Denver Mint pressed on, striking millions of those final copper cents. Each press of the die, each gleaming penny sliding off the conveyor belt, represented continuity, a symbol of American persistence through change. Nobody at the time realized that they were witnessing the last stand of an era that had begun nearly a century earlier with the introduction of the Lincoln cent in 1909. Those who understand numismatics, the study and collecting of coins, know that transitions are everything. Every time a design, metal, or minting process changes, a new line is drawn in history. That's why the 1981 penny carries such weight in collectors' hearts. It marks the border between the age of copper and the age of zinc. And history has a strange way of turning such borders into gold. Now, let's look more closely at how that transition year affected the mint's precision. In 1981, dies were still being engraved the old-fashioned way, with craftsmanship that bordered on artistry. Today, we use computer-guided systems for absolute precision, but back then, every master hub and working die was prepared by human hands. That human touch means tiny differences, minute, almost invisible variations that make certain dies unique. Those differences, when discovered decades later, can make a coin famous. Collectors often talk about die varieties. These are coins produced from a die that was modified, doubled, or even damaged during preparation. For the 1981 penny, one of the most sought-after varieties is the doubled die obverse, a subtle doubling of letters or numbers caused by slight misalignment during die creation. Under magnification, you might see Liberty, or In God We Trust, appearing doubled or shadowed. To the untrained eye, it might look like wear, but to an expert, it's a rare genetic fingerprint of minting history. Another fascinating variety is the wide AM, or close AM, on the reverse of certain Lincoln cents. Though this feature became more prominent in later years, early hints of die spacing variations can sometimes appear on 1981 coins. Such varieties, even if subtle, turn a common coin into a collectible marvel. But beyond errors and varieties, there's another invisible force that defines a coin's destiny: preservation. Copper is a reactive metal. It tarnishes, darkens, and forms patina when exposed to air and moisture. That's why finding an original, red, 1981 penny, one that hasn't turned brown, is almost like finding a time traveler. Most of the billions minted have aged naturally, losing their shine. But those few that were sealed in rolls, stored in airtight containers, or forgotten in controlled environments remain frozen in their original brilliance. These are the coins that make headlines. When experts grade a penny and mark it as MS67 red or MS68 red, it means the coin is practically untouched by time. Such coins are breathtaking under light. They shimmer with that deep, metallic fire that copper alone can produce. And when collectors see that perfection, they see beauty that transcends numbers. That beauty has a psychological power. It's not just about rarity or history, it's about the awe of realizing that something so small could survive so perfectly for so long. That's what makes the $94 million story so believable in collector circles. Because when you witness true perfection, a coin that looks like it was struck yesterday, with surfaces so clean they reflect your face, you understand why someone might call it priceless. Let's take a moment to imagine that perfect 1981 penny. Picture it under a beam of light. Lincoln's profile gleams, the fields shine like polished bronze glass. The edges are razor sharp, the lettering crisp. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial stands clear and flawless, every column straight, every space defined. The coin looks alive, almost unreal. It's not just a piece of metal, it's a reflection of precision, of time, of care. And when such a coin comes to auction, it ignites emotions that go beyond logic. Now, about that reported $94 million value. In the modern numismatic world, some prices reach surreal levels not because of intrinsic metal value, but because of uniqueness and provenance. If a coin is verified as one of one, if it's certified by top grading companies and linked to a significant collection or event, its value becomes subjective, dictated by the collector's desire rather than by the market. The most famous example is the 1933 Double Eagle, a $20 gold coin that sold for nearly $19 million in 2021, even though its gold content was worth less than $2,000. The same psychology applies here. The 1981 penny story, being the last great copper cent, in flawless condition, with mysterious provenance, creates its mythic price. To truly feel the story of the 1981 penny, imagine the moment of discovery, that instant when an ordinary person realizes that a small brown coin, something they've ignored for decades, could be worth more than any mansion, yacht, or diamond. The heart races, the hands tremble, and the mind struggles to accept that this tiny disk of copper could carry a value so astronomical. But that is exactly what makes numismatics so intoxicating. The idea that treasure hides in plain sight keeps people searching, decade after decade, through piles of pennies, bank rolls, and forgotten boxes of change. The 1981 Lincoln cent has become a symbol of that possibility. Every serious collector knows that rarity, condition, and story determine value, but they also know that luck, pure, blind luck, sometimes decides who finds history. And the stories surrounding this penny are filled with that kind of luck. One of the most repeated tales among collectors speaks of a retired machinist in Colorado who, while helping his grandson sort coins for a school project, noticed an unusually bright penny. It had a glow unlike the others, deep, reflective, perfect. When weighed, it came out at exactly 3.11 grams, confirming pure copper. Under a magnifier, every line of Lincoln's coat and hair was razor sharp. When the coin was later examined by a professional grader, it was labeled an MS-70 specimen strike. The rumors claim that this very coin later became the legendary $94 million piece, though no one can prove the full details. Whether the story is truth or myth doesn't matter anymore. It adds to the legend, fueling the dream. Behind that dream lies a profound fascination with the process that created these tiny works of art. Each 1981 penny began as part of a massive copper coil rolled through heavy presses that cut thousands of blank discs in seconds. Those blanks were then tumbled in large drums with a mixture of chemicals and steel beads to clean them and give them their shine. After that, they were heated and cooled to the perfect temperature to achieve softness for striking. Only then were they fed into coining presses capable of delivering immense pressure, enough to stamp Lincoln's portrait with atomic precision. If everything went perfectly, the coin emerged flawless. But perfection is rare in mass production. Dies wear down after thousands of strikes, metal fatigue sets in, minute misalignments appear. So when an error coin or an especially sharp strike survives, it becomes evidence of something extraordinary. A brief moment when every variable aligned perfectly. This is why professional graders spend hours under microscopes studying coins. They look for minute details invisible to the naked eye, A tiny break in the die line, the flow of copper across Lincoln's shoulder, or even the microscopic polishing marks that prove a coin was struck at the start of a production run. Each clue adds to the story, and together they build the foundation of authenticity and value. Now imagine the coin that would one day reach that mythical $94 million figure. It would have to be absolutely flawless, a specimen unlike any other. Its surfaces would need to be immaculate, its fields mirror smooth, and its color a pure, glowing red. It would carry the weight of history and the rarity of condition that collectors dream about. Most likely, it would have never touched human hands until it was graded. The mystique deepens when we think of what might have happened to such a coin after it was struck. Perhaps it was set aside during quality checks, slipped accidentally into a sample batch, or stored unknowingly in a sealed mint bag. For decades it might have rested in darkness, its luster untouched by air, until someone decades later opened that bag and held the past in their palm. That moment of discovery, quiet, private, filled with disbelief, is the heartbeat of every collector's fantasy. Beyond the perfection of the coin itself, the 1981 D penny carries historical echoes that make it irresistible. 1981 was the year before America's coinage composition would change forever. It was the last breath of true copper, a metal that had symbolized stability for generations. In a way, the coin represents the end of industrial craftsmanship and the beginning of modern efficiency. The copper penny of 1981 was the final testament to a century-old tradition that began when Victor David Brenner sculpted Lincoln's face in 1909. Think about the continuity of that design. 72 years of the same portrait, struck billions of times, becoming a constant presence in every pocket, purse, and drawer across America. That continuity gives the 1981 D cent emotional depth. It's a bridge between the 1909 wheat cent and the 1982 zinc era, a bridge built on pure copper and human artistry. When collectors hold a 1981 D penny, they aren't just holding metal, they're holding that continuity, a link through generations. Their grandparents spent these coins, their parents saved them, now they search for them. The $94 million legend takes that connection and magnifies it, turning nostalgia into awe. Economically, too, the penny tells a fascinating story. During the early 1980s, the United States was emerging from the inflationary chaos of the previous decade. Raw material costs had skyrocketed, pushing the mint to seek cheaper alternatives. The change from copper to zinc was a practical decision, but it marked the loss of something intangible: the weight, the feel, the tone of real metal. The 1981 D penny is the last whisper of that authenticity, and collectors cherish it for that reason. Many modern coins, even beautiful ones, lack that same soul because they are products of pure technology. But the 1981 D sits at a perfect intersection, advanced enough to be precisely made, yet still touched by human craftsmanship. You can almost sense the human element, the engraver's care, the mint worker's rhythm, the inspector's trained eye, all preserved in copper. That human connection also explains why people invest emotion, not just money, into coins. To the casual observer, it's absurd to imagine paying millions for a penny. But to the passionate numismatist, it's a tribute, a way of honoring skill, history, and endurance. Just as art collectors pay fortunes for brushstrokes on canvas, coin collectors pay fortunes for perfection in metal. Now picture how the legend of this penny circulates in modern times. Social media channels light up with stories of rare 1981 D found in pocket change. Videos go viral showing people weighing their pennies, shining flashlights across their surfaces, hoping to glimpse that elusive mirror finish. News outlets repeat the tale of the $94 million sale, and the myth takes on a life of its own. Even skeptics find themselves checking the change jar. The excitement is contagious, but this excitement also serves an educational purpose. It introduces new generations to history, to metallurgy, minting, design, and economics. People who might never have cared about coins begin to learn how the mint works, what a die is, how metals behave. The penny becomes a teacher. And in teaching, it gains even more symbolic worth. Consider, too, how the 1981 D penny reflects American values. The Lincoln portrait stands for honesty and perseverance. The words, "In God we trust," and liberty remind us of ideals. The Lincoln Memorial on the reverse speaks of unity. All of these messages, carved into the smallest denomination, make a profound statement. Greatness doesn't depend on size or material. That philosophy mirrors the coin's own story, a small object achieving unimaginable value. The 1981 penny stands as a time capsule, a frozen echo of an era when America's coinage was still crafted from genuine metal, not because it was profitable, but because it was honorable. There's a certain dignity in copper, a warmth that zinc can never imitate. When you hold a real copper penny in your hand, there's weight, there's substance, and you can almost hear the hum of history vibrating through it. That's what gives this coin its power, the weight of authenticity. Collectors and historians often talk about numismatic electricity. It's that pulse you feel when you encounter a coin that's more than metal, more than money. The 1981 has that electricity in abundance. Its story isn't written in ink or stone, it's written in the glow of copper and the whisper of time. To understand how that legend transforms into a $94 million valuation, you must dive into how collectors measure perfection. A coin's grade defines its destiny. Grading isn't a casual glance, it's a forensic ritual. Under magnification, graders examine the fields, those flat surfaces around Lincoln's portrait, for the tiniest hairlines, the faintest trace of contact. They look at luster, that living light that dances when the coin is tilted. They study the strike, ensuring every line of the design is bold and complete. Only a handful of coins in any series ever achieve the near-mythic MS-70 label, mint state perfection. These are the coins that look as though they were just struck seconds ago, flawless, untouched, radiant. Now imagine a 1981 penny, the last of the full copper generation, earning that grade. The market wouldn't simply react, it would explode. Beyond grade lies the story of survival. The Denver Mint struck over 5 billion pennies that year, an ocean of copper discs that poured into circulation. Most were spent within weeks, their luster fading under countless fingerprints. But once in a while, a few escaped the chaos. Maybe a mint employee saved a handful out of admiration. Maybe a collector opened a fresh roll and recognized beauty before the world did. Those few survivors became legends waiting to be rediscovered. The $94 million valuation stems from that intersection of rarity and mythology. Money in the numismatic world isn't just currency, it's storytelling turned into numbers. The price tag represents how deeply people are willing to invest in a dream. A coin that bridges eras, crafted from disappearing material, flawless in preservation, and immortal in design, becomes a relic of civilization itself. It's not about buying a penny, it's about buying proof that perfection once existed. Even the reverse side of the coin, the Lincoln Memorial, adds to the allure. When you tilt the coin just right under light, the detail is astonishing. Every column, every step, every shadow is a miniature architectural masterpiece. And tucked between those columns, if you magnify it, is the tiny outline of Lincoln seated inside the memorial, a sculpture within a sculpture. Few people ever notice that detail, yet it's there, symbolizing that even in small things, greatness hides. This level of artistry is what modern collectors crave. Technology can replicate precision, but it can't recreate soul. The 1981 penny still carries the human touch, the engraver's intuition, the metalworker's rhythm, the mint technician's care. It was made in an age when craftsmanship still mattered, when production was industrial yet personal. Think of what that means for today's generation. A teenager scrolling through their phone might stumble upon a video about a penny worth millions. At first, it's disbelief. Then curiosity. Then the search begins. Suddenly, they're learning about metallurgy, mint marks, dye varieties, and history. That single spark of curiosity can ignite a lifetime of learning. That's the cultural power hidden in this coin. Now, step into the microcosm of the 1981 penny itself, the texture of its copper, the molecular perfection that allowed it to survive 4 decades untarnished. Copper reacts with oxygen, it darkens over time. But when a coin is preserved perfectly, sealed from air, untouched by oil or moisture, it becomes almost eternal. It's as if time pauses around it. That's why collectors call such coins Red gems. They glow like captured sunlight. When the auction world first began whispering about an extraordinary 1981D specimen surfacing, it caused a quiet storm. Private collectors, investors, even museums tuned in. Experts debated authenticity, speculation flared, and somewhere in that fever, the $94 million figure appeared, not as an official sale, but as a symbol of ultimate value. It was the market's way of saying, this coin transcends worth. It defines worth. There's something poetic about that. The smallest denomination, once dismissed as trivial, now standing among the most valuable objects ever sold. It's as though Lincoln himself, the man who rose from humble beginnings, lent the coin his spirit. His face on the penny becomes a metaphor, greatness born from simplicity. Each feature of the coin reinforces that symbolism. The D mint mark beneath the year ties it to Denver, a city that reflects resilience and expansion, the very qualities Lincoln embodied. The motto, "In God We Trust," arches across his head like a crown of ideals. Liberty balances the left side, a reminder of what he fought for. And below, the date anchors the moment in history, 1981, the year before transformation, all of that encapsulated in a circle barely an inch wide. And yet, that inch carries centuries of meaning. That's the magic of coinage, compression of culture into metal. What's more fascinating is how the legend continues to evolve. Each time a new collector enters the community, the story of the 1981D penny is retold, reshaped, magnified. The myth grows larger, not smaller, because myths thrive on repetition. Even if the actual $94 million specimen rests in some private collection, unseen by the public, its legend travels freely, touching every dreamer who empties a jar of coins onto a kitchen table. That's where the emotional resonance lies, not just in rarity, but in hope. People don't collect coins only to own them, they collect stories, they collect possibilities. The 1981D cent has become a symbol of possibility itself, and if you think about it, that's the purest kind of wealth. Every great legend needs its heartbeat, and for the 1981D penny, that heartbeat is human fascination. The coin may be made of copper, but what truly gives it value is belief. Belief that something so small, so ordinary, could hold the power to change a life. When collectors talk about this penny, their voices carry the same awe you'd hear in stories of hidden treasure or lost civilizations. That's what this coin represents, a discovery that defies logic, where the line between luck and destiny blurs completely. When you gaze at the 1981D under bright light, you can almost feel the layers of its journey, the hammering pressure of the die striking it, the gleam of molten copper cooling into shape, the first time it dropped from the press into a bin of newborn coins, glowing red like embers. Every scratchless surface, every crisp line of Lincoln's coat, tells the tale of craftsmanship executed with scientific precision. The Denver Mint was operating at full strength that year, producing millions of coins daily, yet somehow amid that thunder of machinery, a few rare specimens emerged that looked more like jewelry than currency. Those coins, perfectly struck and preserved, became the foundation for today's obsession. It's said that when a single flawless coin survives the odds of mass production, it carries the spirit of an era, like lightning captured in metal. That's why, when the 1981D miracle cent was rumored to exist, it didn't matter whether anyone had truly seen it sell for $94 million. The idea itself was enough to ignite global curiosity. Numismatists began to ask, what makes one penny worth more than all the others? The answer lies in the delicate interplay between rarity, beauty, and condition. Even though billions of 1981D cents were minted, fewer than a handful have been found in pristine, untouched, red condition, their copper surfaces glowing with full original luster. The rest have oxidized, darkened, or worn down through decades of handling. Those few survivors, shining like time capsules, became living proof that perfection can persist even when the odds say it shouldn't. In every collector's heart, there's a quiet dream, the dream of pulling something extraordinary out of the ordinary. That's what drives people to search through pocket change, to inspect jars of coins left by grandparents, to visit flea markets and estate sales hoping for a miracle. The 1981D penny fuels that dream like gasoline on a fire. Its legend says, yes, it can happen. Yes, you could be the one. Imagine finding one. You tilt it under the light and see a red gleam so vibrant it seems alive. You flip it over, see the tiny D mint mark, and your heart stops. You run your finger along the edge, perfectly smooth, untouched. The coin feels heavier, almost magnetic. That's not weight, that's history pressing itself into your palm. And in that instant, every story you've ever heard about rare pennies worth millions no longer feels impossible. It feels real. The 1981 D cent is also an artifact of a turning point in America's industrial story. It marks the moment when cost efficiency began to eclipse material integrity. The following year, 1982, saw the penny's core replaced with zinc, cheaper, lighter, less noble. From that point on, the penny became symbolic of both economic practicality and sentimental loss. That's why collectors hold the 1981 D in such reverence. It's the last heartbeat of the old standard, the final breath of the all-copper era. This shift from copper to zinc was more than a metallurgical change, it was a philosophical one. Copper pennies felt eternal, like they could last centuries. Zinc pennies, though efficient, corrode, bubble, and fade. The 1981 D thus became a symbol of permanence, a relic of an age when things were made to endure. It's no wonder people are willing to believe that one could be worth more than $94 million. In that belief lies a kind of rebellion against disposability, a tribute to endurance. And Lincoln, oh, Lincoln! His image ties it all together. His calm eyes, carved in copper, stare out from the face of the coin like a guardian of time. He represents integrity, perseverance, and sacrifice, qualities that mirror the journey of the coin itself. The legend of the $94 million penny isn't just about money, it's about the triumph of values that never lose worth. Lincoln's portrait has seen empires of finance rise and fall, yet there he remains, unchanged, quietly watching from every pocket in America. Collectors often describe handling such coins as a form of meditation. They study each ridge of the rim, the depth of each engraving, the angle of the light reflecting off Lincoln's cheek. Under magnification, the detail is almost impossible to believe. You can see the texture of the metal, the microscopic ripples from the die striking, the tiny valleys and peaks that form the surface. Every atom of copper feels deliberate, positioned with intent. And what's fascinating is that this attention to detail existed in a coin never meant for art galleries, a coin made for vending machines, parking meters, and daily commerce. That's the paradox that makes it irresistible, beauty created for the mundane. When one of those everyday masterpieces emerges untouched, it becomes art by accident. Then comes the part that changes everything: provenance. Every great collectible needs a story. For the 1981 D, that story is layered with mystery. Some whisper that the $94 million specimen came from a sealed Federal Reserve bag never opened since 1981. Others claim it surfaced in a private estate, passed quietly between generations. Still others suggest it was a test strike meant for internal mint inspection, accidentally released into circulation. Nobody knows for certain, and that uncertainty only amplifies the fascination. In markets where art, history, and mystery intersect, value explodes. That's exactly what happened here. A coin rumored to have been preserved in absolute perfection, untouched for decades, achieved mythical status. Every news article, every YouTube video, every collector's conversation adds fuel to the legend. Each retelling breathes life into the myth, ensuring it will never fade. It's poetic justice that the most undervalued denomination, the penny, has become a symbol of unimaginable wealth. It reminds us that greatness often hides in plain sight. A coin once worth 1 cent becomes a mirror reflecting the boundless imagination of humanity. That imagination is the true currency of our time. As technology evolves and digital money replaces physical cash, coins like the 1981 D grow even more precious. They are tangible, tactile proof that value once had weight, texture, and warmth. You can't feel a cryptocurrency. You can't smell history in a number. But you can hold a penny, and in that touch lies something eternal. When people hear $94 million penny, they think it's a joke, a myth too wild to be true. But then they look deeper, learn about minting errors, condition rarity, auction records, and suddenly it doesn't seem impossible. They realize that value isn't dictated by face value or material, it's dictated by rarity, story, and emotion. And few things in the world combine those elements as perfectly as the 1981 D cent. That's why this coin has transcended numismatics. It's no longer just a collector's item, it's a symbol of hidden potential, of small things holding infinite worth. It's proof that miracles can exist even in copper. As the story of the 1981 D penny deepens, something magical happens. The line between legend and legacy blurs completely. It's no longer just a piece of metal, it becomes a vessel of imagination, carrying within it the dreams of millions who have ever held a coin and wondered, what if this is the one? That simple question, whispered by so many hands, gives the 1981 D a heartbeat stronger than any currency in circulation today. The penny's copper glow has become an icon, a soft reddish flame that refuses to die out. In a world where everything digital vanishes into screens and data clouds, the penny stands as proof that the tangible still matters, that something you can hold, feel, and study with your eyes can be worth more than numbers on a screen. The $94 million valuation, while almost mythical, is a reflection of that yearning for substance, for something real. Think about how many stories are hidden inside the copper surface of one coin. It could have passed through countless hands, a cashier, a child, a soldier, a dreamer, each one leaving an invisible fingerprint of time. Yet for the rare 1981 D that survived untouched, those hands never came. It skipped the noise of life and remained sealed in silence, glowing in its own private eternity. That silence, that untouched perfection, is part of what gives it its unimaginable worth. Every coin tells a story, but few tell it as clearly as this one. The 1981 D whispers of transition, from copper to zinc, from tradition to modernity, from substance to efficiency. It embodies an era when craftsmanship still fought to coexist with industry, when art lived quietly inside utility. And when you stare at it under magnification, you realize you're not just looking at a coin, you're looking at a time machine. Zoom in close enough, and the ridges of Lincoln's coat become like waves of metal frozen in motion. The letters, Liberty and In God We Trust, appear carved with divine patience, as if the engraver wanted each stroke to speak to the soul. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial rises in miniature grandeur, each column a whisper of the real monument's pillars, each step leading upward toward the seated statue of Lincoln, visible even in microscopic scale. That tiny detail, a statue within a sculpture, captures the very essence of American craftsmanship. It's ironic that the smallest denomination holds one of the nation's largest stories. But that irony is what makes the 1981 D so powerful. It's the ultimate underdog, the coin that was never meant to be valuable yet defied every expectation. It's the Lincoln of coins, humble in birth, eternal in legacy. Collectors know that owning such a coin isn't just about wealth. It's about connection. The moment you hold it, you feel tethered to every hand, every mint worker, every historian, and every dreamer who's ever been part of its journey. You feel the pulse of a century, the echo of presses striking metal, the ring of new coins dropping into bins, the rustle of collectors' gloves decades later. It's a living history, condensed into 1 inch of copper, and then there's the emotional side, that raw thrill of discovery. There are countless stories of people who, after watching a video or reading an article about the 1981 D penny, began searching their own change. Some spent months, even years, obsessing over every coin they owned. Others bought rolls of pennies from banks, hoping for a miracle. A few found coins with beautiful luster, sharp strikes, or tiny errors, each discovery feeding their curiosity. Even if none found the $94 million coin, they found something more valuable, the rediscovery of wonder. That's what this coin does. It resurrects the sense of wonder that adulthood often buries. It makes people feel like treasure hunters again, like explorers in their own homes. And that, perhaps, is its truest worth. But let's not forget the deeper symbolism etched in every detail. Lincoln's profile faces right, toward progress, toward the future. His steady gaze, framed by the word Liberty, speaks of endurance through hardship. The date, 1981, anchors him in the final year of the Copper Age, while the small, beneath reminds us that even in mass production, individuality survives. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial mirrors unity, every column standing beside the other, equal in height, equal in strength. Together, they form a temple not just to a man, but to ideals. That's what gives the penny its soul. Its design isn't just decoration, it's philosophy in metal. The 1981D doesn't just represent 1 cent, it represents perseverance, humility, and the belief that greatness can come from the smallest places. Now, imagine the future of this coin's story. Decades from now, when cash has disappeared, when coins are historical artifacts displayed in glass cases, someone will still whisper about the 1981D, the coin that defied its value, the coin that made the world look twice at what it ignored. Museums will display it not merely as currency but as a relic of belief. They'll say, this was the penny that made people dream again, and that dream won't end. Every new collector who learns the story will feel that same spark. Every child who digs through a coin jar will feel that same hope. Every generation will pass down the same whisper, check your pennies, you never know what you might find. The $94 million price tag might sound exaggerated to some, but its real worth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in the impact it leaves, in how it transforms curiosity into obsession, skepticism into belief, and metal into meaning. Because ultimately, the 1981D penny isn't about money. It's about wonder, the most priceless currency of all. When we step back and see the full picture, this coin becomes more than a collector's dream. It becomes a metaphor for life itself. How many times do we overlook small things, not realizing they hold extraordinary potential? How often do we pass by greatness disguised as simplicity? The 1981D penny reminds us to look closer, to pay attention, to believe that the smallest details might hide the grandest treasures. That's why it will always hold a special place in the story of American coinage. Not because it's rare, but because it makes people feel. And in a world that moves too fast, where everything fades into the next update, anything that makes people stop, look closer, and feel awe, that is truly priceless. So the next time someone tells you a penny isn't worth keeping, tell them the story of the 1981D. Tell them about the coin that survived time, changed history, and became worth $94 million, not because of metal, but because of meaning. Because sometimes, the smallest things shine the brightest. Now imagine this for a second. What if right now, sitting somewhere in your house, inside a forgotten jar, or lying under the couch cushion, there's a small copper coin waiting for you to notice it? What if that little 1981D penny that you once ignored, that you once thought was worthless, could be the single object that changes your life forever? Can you feel that chill run down your spine just thinking about it? Every great discovery begins with a moment of curiosity. And that moment could start today. So pause for a second and look at your hands. The same hands that have handled hundreds of coins, maybe even thousands, could one day hold a piece of history worth $94 million. Think about it. The odds may be small, but history has always favored those who believed enough to look. If you've ever wondered whether it's still possible to find treasure in this modern world, the answer is right there, shining faintly in the copper gleam of a penny. Every collector, every dreamer, every kid who started searching, they all began with one question: could this be the one? So here's what I want you to do. After watching this video, go and open that coin jar, that wallet, that dusty box in your drawer. Pull out every old penny you have and start looking closely. Grab a magnifying glass, look under good light, and search for that tiny D mark under the date 1981. Feel your heart beat a little faster as you flip each coin, because who knows? The next one could be the miracle that the world's been waiting to find. And if you do find something unusual, maybe a coin with sharp details, an unusual shine, or even a small minting error, don't let it go unnoticed. Protect it. Study it. Share it. Because sometimes, one discovery can open the door to an entire adventure. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever found an old penny that looked different? Maybe something from the early 80s, or a coin that just felt special. Drop your story down in the comments. I read every one of them, and who knows, your story might end up featured in my next video. And if you're one of those people who's been collecting coins for years, tell us your biggest find. Let's build a community right here, a group of explorers, treasure hunters, and dreamers who refuse to believe that magic is gone from the world. Because together, we can keep the spirit of discovery alive. Now, if you're still watching right now, that means something inside you is drawn to this story. Maybe it's curiosity, maybe it's destiny. So don't just sit there and wonder, join the hunt. You can start by liking this video, because when you do, you're not just supporting a channel, you're helping keep this incredible journey of history and mystery alive. Subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Because next time, we might be talking about another coin, maybe rarer, maybe even more valuable, and one of those coins could be sitting in your pocket right now. Imagine being the person who finds it, the one who turns an ordinary penny into a legendary story worth millions. And when that moment happens, when you hold that perfect 1981 penny in your hand, remember this: every dream begins with the courage to look. The people who find miracles are the ones who never stop searching. So let's make this a mission together. Go check your coins. Share your findings. Tag your friends who collect. Let's fill the comments with photos, dates, mint marks, discoveries, anything that could help others identify their hidden treasures. The more we share, the more likely someone out there will uncover that one coin worth $94 million. And if that person happens to be you, just remember, this was the moment it all began. And now, as we reach the end of this incredible journey, take a deep breath and think about everything this tiny coin represents. The 1981 penny, a coin that most people would walk past without a second thought, has become a symbol of something far greater than its copper shell. It reminds us that value isn't always measured in dollars or gold, but in the stories we uncover, the memories we preserve, and the hope we refuse to lose. Somewhere out there, right now, that one coin, untouched, flawless, shimmering faintly under perfect light, still exists. Maybe locked inside a collector's case. Maybe hidden in a jar that hasn't been opened for decades. Or maybe, just maybe, waiting silently in your very own pocket, destined to reveal itself when you least expect it. It's a reminder that history doesn't always announce itself with trumpets. Sometimes, it hides quietly in the smallest corners of our lives. The 1981 penny is proof that greatness can live in the simplest things, a message from the past that still echoes today. When Abraham Lincoln's face was first struck on a coin, it wasn't just about commemorating a president. It was about honoring an idea that even in struggle, even in humility, greatness can be born. And this 1981 penny, decades later, carries that same spirit forward. It's the story of persistence, of unseen beauty, of silent worth. So when you hold a penny in your hand from now on, don't see it as change, see it as a piece of history, a chance, a whisper of something extraordinary. Because behind that small D, behind that year, 1981, behind the shine of copper lies a tale of transformation, from metal to memory, from ordinary to legendary. And maybe that's why this story has captured so many hearts. It's not just about coins. It's about the mystery of life, how small things can carry the biggest impact, how overlooked moments can turn into miracles. Every 1981 penny reminds us to slow down, to look closer, to believe that wonder still exists in this world. So as this video fades out, remember this moment, the spark you felt, the curiosity that's alive right now. Because curiosity is where every treasure hunt begins. Maybe tonight you'll pour out that jar of coins and feel that same thrill. Maybe tomorrow you'll walk into a shop, pay with change, and notice something strange about one coin. Maybe you'll find your story written in copper. If you ever do, you'll remember this voice, this moment, this feeling. The moment you realize that the smallest thing in your hand could hold a story big enough to change everything. And whether your 1981 penny is worth a cent or $94 million, it has already given you something priceless. The wonder of possibility. So keep looking, keep believing. And never stop chasing that spark of mystery that hides in plain sight. Because as long as people like you keep searching, history will keep whispering its secrets. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey into the heart of one coin that defied the odds and became a legend. If you felt the magic tonight, Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with everyone who still believes that miracles can be found in the most unexpected places. Because who knows? The next great discovery could be yours. And maybe, just maybe, the next penny that changes history is already in your hand.